We've got funding that is now under threat, and then we have funding that has officially been terminated. And so in New York 14, in our district, a lot of people don't know that that huge amounts of the Montefiore Hospital network is in our community, our congressional district. And of course, we have New York hospitals, H&H. Elmhurst Hospital is just outside the district, but of course, so many of us rely on Elmhurst Hospital and Jacobi Hospital as well. And so we actually have a lot of healthcare workers, healthcare providers, and hospital networks in our congressional district. And that includes healthcare research. So right now we have about $255 million of healthcare research in our community that is under threat. It has not been canceled yet. And I've been working very hard to defend
and I'm with the Office of Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight at our town hall in Jackson Heights. You'll soon be hearing from Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez on updates from her work in Washington, D.C., and some constituent updates for us here in the district. Before we begin, just a few notes of housekeeping. Sorry about that. Is this better? No? I'm sorry. We'll work with it. I'll be louder. Okay. After hearing from Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez, we will answer questions from the audience. Okay. If you have a question, please write it down on the slip you received when you arrived, and be sure to write down your name and your neighborhood. My colleagues will be walking around shortly to collect your question slips. For those of you tuning in virtually, you can also submit your questions. You can email your questions to aoc.townhall@mail.house.gov, or you can give us a call at 718-662-5970. If you need interpretation services, please make sure to visit the table at the back of the room. We have in-person interpretation available in Spanish, Bangla, and ASL. If you have any questions or need any assistance at any point, please find one of our staff members. And now it is my pleasure to welcome Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to the stage.
Hi, everyone. How are we doing? Hey, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, so much. Can you all hear me okay? Can you all hear me right? Okay, great. Thank you all so much for coming. I so appreciate it. This is our largest town hall ever in the history of this district. We've got about 450 people here in this room, and we also have people in the overflow in the gym that are also, we're kind of piping it in over there. So it's so exciting and wonderful when our community is so vibrantly engaged and excited and ready to organize for this time in our democracy, because that's what this moment really calls for, in order for us to come together and defend our rights, defend our neighbors, and defend everything that we're here, that we hold dear for this country. So thank you all so much for being here today. I really appreciate it. So is this anyone's first town hall here with us today? Yes, give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you. So usually the way that we go about these is that at the top of the town hall, I'm just going to run through some updates in terms of what we've been doing in Washington for everyone here. I'm going to run through that kind of quickly so that we can then move to the Q&A, and I'm able to answer as many questions as I can from you all. But in terms of some overall updates, with respect to what we will be covering today. I want to talk a little bit about the Trump and Doge impacts in our neighborhood and community specifically. Yeah, not great. It's terrible, but that's the preview. But I want us to also know with some detail what are some of the things that we're going to be seeing and experiencing so that we know where to direct our energy and our attention. I'm going to talk about something known as reconciliation. These are all the budget cuts that we've been talking about. When they're going after Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, those budget cuts are done through a legislative process known as reconciliation. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means and how that intersects with my new assignment in this Congress on the Committee on Energy and Commerce. A little bit of a preview. All of the Medicaid work and all of the Medicaid fight is going to go through the Energy and Commerce Committee, which is the committee that I was just assigned to this Congress. And we're going to fight for that. And I feel like we're going to win. I feel like we're going to win on that. But it will not be without a lot of work. So we'll talk about that. Then we'll talk about some immigration updates that we have in the district, as well as some additional district updates. I'm going to try to breeze through that as quickly as I can so that we can then get to the Q&A at the very end. So we'll just get started right that. Let's go to our first slide in terms of Trump and Doge's impacts on New York 14. So right now, let me see. Can we get the slide to move? Do I need to do that? Is there a clicker here? Okay, here we go. So we've heard about Doge going in and cutting and slashing and burning on all sorts of federal programs across the country. We've seen many federal workers that have been fired and summarily dismissed. And this has been tremendously concerning for overall things across the country, from medical researchers to folks who are giving our veterans care at the VA. People have been impacted across the board. But in terms of our neighborhood, right here in our backyard, in Jackson Heights, in the Bronx, in other areas of Queens, this is what we're seeing in terms of our immediate community. We've got funding that is now under threat, and then we have funding that has officially been terminated. And so in New York 14, in our district, a lot of people don't know that that huge amounts of the Montefiore Hospital network is in our community, our congressional district. And of course, we have New York hospitals, H&H. Elmhurst Hospital is just outside the district, but of course, so many of us rely on Elmhurst Hospital and Jacobi Hospital as well. And so we actually have a lot of healthcare workers, healthcare providers, and hospital networks in our congressional district. And that includes healthcare research. So right now we have about $255 million of healthcare research in our community that is under threat. It has not been canceled yet. And I've been working very hard to defend and Q&A. We'll get to that in the Q&A. We'll get to that in the Q&A. Listen, I am happy. I am happy. Yes, I understand. We will take your I will take your question. I'm happy to take your question. We're happy to take your question. I'm happy to take your question. Okay, here's the deal. I'm happy to take your question. I'm happy to take your question. Listen. Ma'am, you're going to have to sit down. All right, ma'am. All right. I'm sorry, ma'am. Listen. All right, ma'am. Ma'am. All right, listen, ma'am. Ma'am. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Sorry. Listen, folks. All right. All right, folks. Okay. Thank you. Listen, folks. All right. All right. I mean, here's the deal. With town halls, I more than welcome people who disagree or are maybe even super pissed off at me for any issue to come. But we have some ground rules here, which is that please wait to the Q&A because we don't want to deprive all of our neighbors of the ability to have information and hear things and respond to it. I'm not the, you know, trust me, I'm not a person that's going to not call on someone that I think is going to answer, that's going to ask a tough question. We're more than happy to do that, but we need to be able to have this conversation. So thank you all. Anyways, so we have this healthcare research that's under threat, but we've been working very hard to stave off those cuts. So far, we've been successful, but it takes constant work on it, and we've been able to do that, including reaching out on a bipartisan level in order to get that done. But what has been terminated has been $63 million in FEMA funding for the East Elmhurst and Hunts Point cloudburst projects. Now, what that means, cloudburst, does anyone remember that kind of flash storm that happened a couple of years ago? It was absolutely tragic. We lost 12 of our neighbors in basement apartment flooding because of this sudden storm that came up a couple of years ago. That was known as a cloudburst. After that storm, I brought then President Biden to the district. We brought him to East Elmhurst, to one of the neighborhoods that was most affected. And we got $63 million in funding to help try to reconstruct some of these areas and stave off some of what we had seen there. We received notice that grant, that the Trump administration terminated that grant. And this is something that we're still trying to figure out how to recoup, but I want you all to know that that's some of the actual backyard cancellations that are happening as a result of Trump and Doge. And so a lot of times Republicans kind of go around and they're like, oh, they're just cutting waste. This is just about fraud and abuse. No, 12 people died in this neighborhood and we were doing something to fix it and they have cut it. This is not about going after waste, fraud, and abuse. This is about looting the public funds in order to pay for tax cuts for Elon Musk. And if Republicans really want to go after waste, fraud, and abuse, I sat on the Oversight Committee for 6 years. They need to go after and allow for an actual audit of the Pentagon and an audit of defense contractors. In terms of other funding that's under threat across New York State, we've got $60 million in environmental justice grants, $10 million in grants for the state education department, and $300 million in grants for the New York State Department of Health, the Office of Mental Health, and the Office for Addiction Services. We also have some terminated grants here, which is an ORR grant. This is the Office of Refugee Resettlement. So these are for refugees and the grants that we've been seeing there. For unaccompanied minors and children. That was canceled. We have HUD emergency housing vouchers that were canceled for next year, and citizenship and integration grant program contracts that have been canceled. And so we're doing as much as we can to try to see how we can compensate and defend against that. So we've got that. Our next slide here is to also talk about energy and commerce. So this year, I shifted from the Oversight Committee, and I am now assigned to the Committee on Energy and Commerce. This is one of the most powerful committees in all of Congress. 60% of all the legislation that passes through Congress goes through this committee. It has jurisdiction over healthcare, over technology, over energy projects. So it has very wide jurisdiction. And it also oversees massive areas of Medicare, Medicaid, and other key programs. And the jurisdiction in and of itself is $2.5 trillion of the American economy. And so this Medicaid fight is right here at our doorstep. In fact, one of the big victories that we've had recently that I was able to share at yesterday's May Day rally in Foley Square is that we had this Medicaid fight. Republicans are talking about this reconciliation process, and we can go to that slide now as well. Is that Republicans keep talking about they need to find $880 billion in cuts through the Energy and Commerce Committee alone. And what I find very interesting is that they aren't saying, hey, cut all the waste that you find. Go investigate, go see if you can find waste or find. No, they're saying, we need $880 billion to pay for the GOP tax cut. They say we want to cut almost $1 trillion in taxes for billionaires and the very rich. And they found the E&C committee, Energy and Commerce, and they're saying we want $880 billion of that to come from this committee. We want $880 billion to come from Medicare or Medicaid. They wanted to come from Medicaid and or Medicare, Social Security, etc. However, what we have been able to do is sound the alarm on this. And in our rallies with Senator Sanders, in our ability to organize to the public, we've been sounding the alarm on this. And the problem that Republicans come into is that their own constituents are on Medicaid. Everyone is on Medicaid. Not everybody, but huge amounts of people are on Medicaid. A lot of people don't know. If you could guess, out of every baby that is born today in the United States, 40% of them are covered by Medicaid. Huge amounts, 30% of Medicaid disbursements go to people who receive Medicare. And so people think that these programs are these small little things. Medicaid is one of the largest sources of health coverage in the United States, point blank, period. In fact, the ACA, the Affordable Care Act, is an extension. It relies on extending Medicaid disbursements in order to help finance the ACA. So even if you have even if you're covered by ACA insurance, that is also done through a Medicaid mechanism as well. So these cuts to Medicaid are very serious and they're very real. And next week, the Republican caucus here in the House, we were supposed to have our markup. This is when they finally give us the legislation and we go through line by line all of the cuts that they wanted to make. And so that was supposed to happen on Tuesday. I was prepping for this. We were doing all of our research. And then we found out last night that we had turned the temperature up, the political temperature up on this so high that they canceled next week's hearing for the cuts. And they're moving it for 2 weeks. So they are on the defense. They are on the defense, and it is very serious. And so we're going to be doing that. But they have rescheduled that for 2 weeks from now. So we have to make sure that we continue to organize and rally around Medicaid and Medicare. But overall, what they're trying to do is that they're trying to cut $880 billion from that. They want to do another $230 billion. So we're talking about $1 trillion in cuts, but from SNAP, from the Agricultural Committee. And so they want to cut SNAP and cut Medicaid. And they're also proposing changes that include work, quote unquote, they call them work requirements, but I call them paperwork requirements. Because Medicaid is one of the most effective public programs and efficient public programs that we actually have. They've gone through, they've genuinely, only 2 to 4%, 96 to 98% of all people on Medicaid are verifiably, certifiably either have a disability, an extreme disability, they cannot work, they qualify through their income, they are a caregiver and cannot work. We know this about Medicaid, and we know that it's already one of the most efficient public systems. And there are states like Georgia and Arkansas that have tried to institute these things. First of all, it actually makes costs explode, because when you are forcing people to do a ton more paperwork, you have to hire a lot more bureaucrats to go through that paperwork. And what we actually found was that in the state of Georgia, 90% of all that extra money ended up going to administrators and not into healthcare. So it adds costs to try to process all of this bureaucracy by creating more bureaucracy, and it takes money away from actually going to paying nurses, doctors, covering prescriptions. It's just bad all around for a program that we know does not have large amounts of waste. If Medicaid in fact had huge amounts of fraud, etc., it's something to address, but we know that it doesn't. And so all this is doing is actually adding waste instead of taking it away. So we've got our next slide here after reconciliation, which is some of the things that we're seeing on immigration. Of course, immigration, this is an issue that is very near and dear to our community. Our community is overwhelmingly immigrant families, first, second generation. And we want to make sure, and one of our highest priorities is keeping families together while keeping our community safe. Point blank, period. And I want everyone here to know and to understand that my office is a safe place for casework if you need or have any, point blank, period. And I want everyone here to know and to understand that my office is a safe place for casework if you need or have any questions about your status or your family status. We are able to process things. We will not share any information. If we need to do an inquiry on your case, we will ask for that permission to do so. And we have been able to clear up a lot of casework and a lot of issues in people's status through my office. So if you know someone that you think or they feel like they're hiding in the shadows, that they're afraid, that they don't know who to reach out to, that they either maybe have lost their status through some sort of missed deadline or something like that, please encourage them to reach out to our office. We have a great track record, and we are very, very often able to help people get on the right track, regularize their status, or figure out what their options are. That being said, the Trump administration, they like to say, and this is what Trump ran on, right? He said, we're only going to go after the quote unquote criminals. Yeah, exactly. We're only going to go after the quote unquote criminals. However, their position is that everyone undocumented is a criminal. That's what they think. They think that the DACA recipient, that the baby that was here from 2 years old, whose only country they have ever known is the United States, that maybe have served in this country or now is a doctor, is a quote unquote criminal. They think that folks who are undocumented are that. But on top of that, they're not even just going after undocumented people. They are making people undocumented by revoking legal status. And they are starting that with TPS, something known as temporary protective status and parole programs. That is an area in which people that have where there's huge amounts of political or other kinds of instability at home, the United States agreed to officially create almost like a legal status by which people from those areas fleeing some of the harshest conditions in the world can come to the United States and offer for status. In fact, we fought for TPS for Venezuelan refugees not too long ago. And they are canceling TPS programs. So people who are here lawfully, they are canceling these TPS programs to make them undocumented in order to go after them. So this is not about quote unquote illegal immigration. This is anti-immigration. And it is very important that we understand that and cut through the rhetoric and cut through the nonsense, because they do not have a leg to stand on when it comes to this argument. They've also ramped up deportations, including deportations to Guantanamo and also to El Salvador, which is completely illegal. And I don't even want to call them deportations. They are sanctioned kidnappings in many circumstances. You know, they want to talk about why America is great or making America great. Our civil liberties and our civil protections are part of what makes America great. It is our democracy. And when you want to shred up our Constitution and eliminate due process, it is one of the most, it's attacking what it means to be an American. And it is eroding and degrading what it means to be an American when we rip up our Constitution and due process. And that's exactly what they're doing here. We have, of course, attacks on free speech. We have our own Mahmoud Khalil in Colombia a Columbia student who was detained and is detained, and we've been in close contact with his family in advocacy for his case in order to release him from the Louisiana detention center that he is in. But the only grounds in which he was detained was him exercising his free speech in order to advocate for Palestinian human rights and to end the war in Gaza. And we have to make sure that we are advocating for him and agitating for his release. We recently had another student in Vermont that we were able to successfully advocate for his release. He is out on bail. That happened this week, and we are hoping to be able to do the same thing for Mahmoud Khalil. And I want you all to know that my office is personally tasked and assigned with that case. Mahmoud was a Columbia student, but our office has been able to take the lead on that case for the New York City delegation, and we have been doing that. Now, additionally, what we've also seen is that the Trump administration has done absolutely, they have broken, it's not even enough to say that they have broken norms. Historically, if you were undocumented, you could still pay taxes in the United States. And millions of people, undocumented people, pay taxes in this country in the hope that they can one day regularize their status and be on a path to citizenship. The Trump administration has decided to end that firewall between the IRS and ICE, as well as with HUD, the Housing and Urban Development. And so there's now unprecedented data sharing that is happening that is very dangerous, and I think it should be dangerous for all of us. This is not just about immigrants. This is about all of our privacy and all of our civil rights. But what we've also been doing is I've been hosting Know Your Rights seminars through my office so that communities across our district understand what their rights are. If ICE knocks on your door, they do not have carte blanche to enter, point blank, period. And if they do want to knock on your door or knock on anyone's door, including your workplace, you can tell them, show me a warrant. Show me a judicial warrant. And if they don't show you a warrant, you can say you can come back with a warrant. You have the right to turn them away unless they have the proper paperwork or are coming in the proper way. And when we first did one of these seminars, Tom Homan, then acting director of ICE, said that he was going to threaten to refer me to DOJ because I'm using my free speech rights in order to advise people of their constitutionally guaranteed protections. And he may want to do it again today. And to that I say, come for me. You're going to have to come for me. Do I look like I care? Because the way that we guarantee in this moment, when people say, how do we protect against everything that's going on? How do we make sure that what can we do to prevent this erosion, all this stuff that's happening? We do it by exercising and using our constitutional rights. Our rights are use it or lose it. So we need to use it. And we need to challenge them. So don't let them intimidate you into thinking that you're doing something wrong by telling people what their actual legal constitutional rights are. There's nothing wrong about it, and there's nothing illegal about it. And if they want to make it illegal, they can come take me. That's how I feel about it. Next, some brief district updates. We do have new district lines this cycle because of the court. New York State court redrew some of our district lines last time. So this area of Jackson Heights, I'm back. And it feels so good to be back, I'll tell you. We also have some immigration casework. I mentioned that before. Please encourage people to come forward, but also same thing, Social Security. If something is wrong with your Social Security, your Medicare, your Medicaid, please come to my office. Sometimes you don't have to pay a lawyer $1 gazillion to do that. We will do it for free. Sometimes they don't want you to know that. But we can, or if you do need legal counsel, we're happy to refer you to some resources. And also, everyone, Real ID is kicking in. That is next Wednesday, I believe, next week, May 7th. And if you do not have your real ID, you will not be able to fly. And so if you have a flight coming up, please make sure you stop by the DMV. The lines are really long right now, unfortunately, because everyone's rushing to do it all at once. But please make sure that you do that and kind of update your real ID, because summer's around the corner and people are going to want to travel, or in emergency, you might have to go fly, see a family member, and we want you to be able to fly. And that's that on district updates. And now we can move to our Q&A. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman. We will now begin taking questions from the audience. I will call out 2 names at a time, so please stand up when you hear your name and your neighborhood. My colleague will bring a microphone to you. The first 2 questions are from Melissa Savala from Jackson Heights and Will from Astoria.
Hi, sorry. Yes, now I hear the difference. I'm wondering, sorry. I'm wondering if there's something that you can do in terms of helping land preservation issues around Queens, especially in our area, considering that we're about to lose parkland, and there's also a housing crisis, and I'm wondering what you think about that and what you can do to help.
Thank you. Sorry, I can, the top part of the question, sorry, I'm trying to hear. Is it, you said the land, parkland use?
Yeah.
Is this around the casino?
Yes.
Okay. The casino. Okay, so for folks who may or may not be familiar, there's the proposal around the casino in Citi Field. And in fact, in our community, we have not just one casino proposal, we have 2 casino proposals. There's one in Queens, and there's another one in Throgs Neck in the Bronx half that Bally's is trying to put out there. And in terms of the process, I will say that formally, I don't have a vote in this. The way that it works is that it's, I believe, like all of your city and state elected. So it's the city council person, your state rep, your state senator, and they have to vote on it. I'm not included in that committee for a vote, so I don't have a formal vote on it. But I have made my position actually on both of these casinos clear. I am not supportive. Now I will say, there are, and the 2 casino proposals are different. In the case of Bally's, I do not believe that Bally's has provided the resources. Listen, parkland is very precious land, and there should be, if there's going to be any proposal to alienate parkland, whoever's going to be utilizing that parkland should be investing in the community, and it shouldn't just be a one direction thing. And in the case of Bally's, the proposal does not have really anything binding, and we are going to be alienating a lot of parkland in the Bronx, and there's no give back from Bally's to the community in that specific instance. And so, and also on top of that, I think like $100 million of that would also, due to a prior arrangement, would go to the Trump organization. And like, it's just a mess. The whole thing's a mess. So in terms of Bally's, those are, I'm not supportive of it. But also just in general, on the Queens half, I understand there's like, it's more split, right? There are members of the community who are supportive, members of the community who are not. I personally, just writ large, am uncomfortable with bringing gambling into, that's just kind of where I'm coming from. But again, once again, like I know that this is a very heated discussion point. And that's just kind of where I'm coming from on this. But again, I don't have a vote. I don't have, this is a state and city level. And I know there's a lot of intense feelings on this, and I want to make sure that we can get through this as a community. Also, the city field part has been redistricted out of my district. So this is, pardon? Yes, you're right. The neighbors, of course, and the folks that live in our community are affected by it. I felt similarly about, Amazon HQ too. That was also controversial, and people in our community were affected by that. But in terms of the actual district, it is now in Congressman Meng's district. But again, neither one of us, because this is a state issue, neither one of us have a vote on this. But I have, respectfully kind of made my position on this known to folks who are weighing in on it. But again, that's kind of, I don't really have anything to do beyond that besides kind of making my position on that. So thank you. Next question.
Okay. Right after this, we will take questions from Eric from Astoria and Liam from Astoria.
Hi.
It's from Will from Astoria.
Hi, this is amazing because I've followed your campaign since you ran against Joe Crowley in 2018. So it's just like you've come so far. Now I get to actually talk to you. So this is awesome. My question to you is, because I'm from Astoria, if I want to go see the Yankees play, right now it takes about an hour to go from Astoria, which is right there, all the way around to the Bronx. I have to go through Manhattan, and I have to take the Lexington Avenue line, and it's always, it could be 3 a.m. and it's still packed. So my question to you is, I've seen the MTA unveil new plans for a Queens-Brooklyn line, but of course the Bronx was absent from that, even though the railroad tracks are there from Queens to the Bronx. Is there any plans or any way we could actually get some viable public transit from Queens to the Bronx?
Oh, you're speaking my language here. As someone who has to represent both of these boroughs, it's the worst commute ever on the train. And listen, like, I want, where I can, I would love to use public transit, but it is like the worst schlep ever trying to go from the Bronx to Queens. But you're right. There is this proposed line. What is the BQX? I think it's what they're calling it, or BXQ. I don't know. But they're reviving. There was existing track that years ago was decommissioned or kind of brought offline that went from Brooklyn to Queens, and it was recently announced that that the state and the MTA is going to revive those tracks so that we can finally be able to commute from one borough to another without always having to go through Manhattan all the time, which is amazing. But to your point, it goes from Brooklyn and it ends in Queens, which continues our kind of transit desert problem in the Bronx. And as someone from the Bronx, I, not just like for personal reasons, but also we have City Island in the Bronx, we have Throgs Neck, we have Soundview, we have so many beautiful communities that deserve to be connected to the rest of the city. And I have written a letter to Governor Cuomo. I mean, not Governor, oh my God. God forbid. Sorry. To Governor Hochul. I have written a letter. I've written a letter to Governor Hochul. I did that, I think, about last year when it was first announced, advocating for that extension to the Bronx. That will take a lot more investment because that rail line that was pre-existing from Brooklyn to Queens doesn't apply, I think, to the Bronx, but it doesn't mean that we shouldn't pursue it. And so I am deeply, deeply supportive of increasing our transit options. I've advocated with that for the governor, and we're also organizing in amongst our elected officials for support in that. In the meantime, we have successfully, in my time in Congress, we've successfully added an extended ferry service to Soundview in the Bronx. And we're hoping to add City Island to that and make sure people can really enjoy that, especially during the summertime. So thank you.
This next question is from Eric in Astoria. After that, we'll have a question from Liam in Astoria, and then Sharon David from Jackson Heights.
Liam? Is Liam here? Is there
Hi,
Liam?
I'm Liam. I just moved like last month. I have
Welcome.
a compound question here. Two really big issues: tariffs and the F1 deportations. Both kind of related in the fact of how are you going to keep Trump as a crazy person in the White House that can't actually affect me. Kind of like the people on the like A subway trains that kind of rant, but like over there and not near me.
Sorry, could you repeat? I'm sorry, folks. Sometimes it's a little hard. Can you have
Oh,
to,
sorry. It was really about how like all these tariff problems and stuff has started affecting and the F1 deportations, how you like combating Trump's craziness with that.
Yes. Okay. And you said combating his craziness with fact, you said?
In all of those situations, how are you combating Trump's craziness,
Okay.
tariffs, F1 visas?
So a lot of this has to do, I think there's different kinds of ways to approach Trump. I think a lot of times people have seen, perhaps felt the Democratic Party being a little on its back foot in the Trump administration. And I think it's because there are multiple ways to address Trump. And oftentimes there are a lot of people who think that we need to lean on institutions and rules and like processes in order to roll back and resist everything that the Trump administration is doing. And it's not to say that those things should be abandoned, because sometimes we do win. Like we are able to turn some of these things over in court. We are able to roll some of these things back, but also we can't rely on rules with a rule breaker. And it means that we have to get creative. And it really does mean that with a reality TV show president, that public opinion matters. Public opinion really does matter. And when we're able to be on our offense with some of these folks and we're able to turn the public tide, then we are sometimes able to get and secure some changes and some rollbacks in what they are planning to do. And so I think we need to have, and this has been to our point here and what we did 6 years ago, both an inside and outside strategy. And sometimes I think it has leaned too much on an inside strategy with not enough of an outside strategy. And it's very important that we be organizing and educating people right now. So on the point with tariffs, these tariffs are going to start to be, I want you all to know, we're going to really start feeling the consequences of these tariffs in about 2 to 4 weeks from now. Because in terms of our supply chain, and we all now are much more familiar with supply chains after COVID, in terms of supply chains, when these tariffs are announced and when they start to become enacted, we don't feel the issues in our supply chain the next day. It's when everything that was from the ports coming into the ports the day that it was announced, when that gets to our shelves and after they've been bought up, it's about what is happening at the ports the day after and a couple weeks after. And as we've seen, maybe some of you have seen, some of these ports are starting to kind of empty out a little bit. And so I don't say this so like people start stealing all the toilet paper from Costco. Please do not do that. But it's to say that things may get more expensive, and we're going to feel those changes in prices, not in an immediate sense, although some people may have already seen some prices go up. But we're going to really start feeling that in the next 2 to 4 weeks. And when public opinion, when it's very important that we continue beating the drum that these price increases are because of the tariffs, that the tariffs are doing this. Because what they don't want is for people to connect, A, to be aware that prices are going up, and B, to connect the dots that the prices are going up because of those tariffs. And so we need to be really sharing that information. I, of course, will be doing that in a public sense, but in an era of disinformation and misinformation, and there are plenty of folks that may not believe it when I'm saying it, but they believe stuff when their friends are telling them. And so our social ties and our social connections and personal relationships in transmitting information are now more important than ever, because there are lots of folks that maybe won't believe CNN, or they may not believe, TV, but they will believe when you say something or when you re-amplify some information. And so peer-to-peer information sharing is very important. And in fact, I think that's a big part of why they are rolling back these Medicaid cuts and delaying these Medicaid cuts, because Trump is so much on the defense with his tariff disaster that now he knows that he can't take the hit on cutting Medicaid too. And so I think that we have to just continue to lay on him with respect to that. In terms of our community and in terms of immigration, the Know Your Rights seminars and the Know Your Rights information has been very, very effective in protecting our community from kind of these ICE raids that are trying to skirt the law and not fulfill their legal obligations. When our community knows their rights, and when everyday people know their rights, then we actually see some of that activity reduce in our own backyard, because they know that they can't just take people as easily. They can't take an educated community as easily as they can take one that is not as educated. And so we have lots of Know Your Rights materials. If anyone here would like them or would like to distribute them, we have flyers available. We have them in digital versions for you to print out. We have them in physical versions for you to take home. But feel free to request those, and we're happy to provide them. Thank you.
Our next question is from Eric in Astoria. Eric, can you stand up, please? And after this, we'll be hearing from Sharon from Jackson Heights, so please also stand up.
Hello, AOC. Hey, I'm wondering, what are some of the steps that we can take to raise the minimum wage to a livable wage?
Yes, thank you. So amazing question. I think raising the minimum wage to a living wage should be one of the top Democratic priorities, period. And I think it should be on the top list of any priority that anybody, whether you are seeking to be any sort of leader in the Democratic Party, I think we need to be raising the minimum wage to a living wage. And in fact, in 2018, when we last had a House majority, it was under the Trump presidency, but when we had that House majority, the House passed back then a $15 national minimum wage, but it did not pass in the Mitch McConnell controlled Senate. I think we need to reintroduce that legislation. However, that was a long time ago, and I think we need to really do an assessment of what that number should be now. But bare minimum, I think we need to be reintroducing that legislation, if not indexing it up slightly. And we were able to pass it. I think we need to work to make sure that we are, even though we are in the minority in the House, we need to make sure that we are teeing up this legislation to be able to pass in the first 100 days of a Democratic majority, which means I believe introducing it to Congress, even though Republicans may not bring it to the floor, we need to have every single Democratic member of Congress co-sponsored on a minimum wage bill, so that we know who is outstanding and who we need to get in order to pass this thing once we win the majority next year, which if I have anything to do with it, we will. So we will continue to be organizing with our union and our labor partners, as well as many others, to ensure that that remains at the top of the docket. But the good news is that on the House side, we have that. Now, we brought it up again. Senator Sanders brought this in to try to append it to reconciliation. And famously, Kirsten Sinema did her that thing. And it did not pass the Senate because of that. But we have a new senator in that seat, and we have new numbers there. And so I think that we hopefully will be able to do that. There was also, what was complicated in that was that there was this whole thing, it was a rule, there's something called a bird bath, and there's a reconciliation, and people are disagreeing about the rules on that. It's a long story. But the point is that I think where we need to target our organizing there is in the Senate as well, and making sure that we're getting our numbers in the Senate to tee that up for passage too. So thank you.
Our next question is
Hi,
from
my name is
Sharon
Sharon, and I'm from
Jackson
from-
Heights. And after that, we will have a question from Eladio from Astoria.
oh, okay, I'm from Jackson Heights. So, my question is, with all the deregulation, I'm concerned about like the dismantling of the EPA. I'm concerned about the air quality and the water quality and what's being done, like, you know, the federal and local level, like, and the firing of federal workers. Just like, what are we doing to protect our water and air?
Yes, this is deeply concerning as well in terms of, so the question, if folks didn't hear, the question was, she is concerned about a lot of our information and a lot of what we can do when it comes to air quality and water quality. There are cuts to the EPA, these mass firings of federal workers. And I am extremely concerned about this too. In the Trump administration's they are in this effort to try to deny climate change and in their effort to try to attack any and all environmental provisions because they are bought and sold by the oil and gas industry. Just so we know why that is happening. Trump is owned by big oil. And because he is owned by big oil, and there's reporting on this where he basically went to all these oil and gas executives before the election, and he said, you scratch my back, you help my election, I'll give you whatever you want in terms of the environment. And that's why they're being so reckless in cutting and attacking anything and everything to do with the environment. And that's not just about oil and gas and attacking renewable energy. They are going after, as we've seen with DOGE, they've gone after what is known as NOAA, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency and Administration. And what is deeply concerning about this, to your point, is that this is some of the most important, rigorous, and objective scientific information that we have to predict storms, to look at our air quality. Like during COVID, there were a lot of people who were like looking at their air quality monitors in the morning. Or if you live in East Elmhurst or Corona around LaGuardia Airport, people really care about the air quality reports around there because also on the Bronx half, we have some of the highest childhood asthma rates in the country. So people sometimes have apps on their phone, especially if you have a respiratory illness or are immunocompromised, where you will look up something known as the AQE, the air quality, or the AQI, the air quality index, so that you can kind of prepare for your day. The way that some people check the weather, other people, especially if you have asthma, you might check the AQE. And they are attacking NOAA, they're attacking and gutting the EPA, so that that these instruments may become less reliable. And as we go into the summer and as we go into hurricane season, this becomes very, very dangerous because those storm alerts that we get sometimes where people say, hey, they come on your phone, they say a flash flood is coming. That is under threat with all of these cuts that are going on. And this poses severe threats to life and property. And these are some of the things that we have to make sure that we are reaching out to and trying to advocate to protect. The environmental stuff is some of the hardest stuff that we have found to protect because they are so wholesale. Anything that has to do with the environment is bad and should be cut. And I don't even think they understand the extent to which this is compromising and hurting people in order to get advance notice from storms, etc. So the only thing that I can think of in this moment, when it comes especially to the cuts on environmental stuff, is leaning on our state. And I do think that on the state and city level, we need to be very muscular and very aggressive in investing on environmental provisions and environmental infrastructure on the state, because that fight is one of the hardest ones federally. Some of the other stuff, healthcare, etc., we're able to get some wins with them on. The environmental stuff, they are so head in the sand. They don't believe climate change is real. They don't believe that storms, and also we're seeing this too with the FDA. that we are concerned about some of the health outbreaks, the factories that should be monitored for meat processing, etc. This infrastructure is eroding right now. And so if there's an outbreak, it's even harder for us to know, where it was the FDA's responsibility to say, hey, we're pulling this deli meat off the shelves because there might be a listeria outbreak. This saves lives. And so in terms of our food system, this is something that is very concerning that we have to continue to invest in. But on environmental provisions specifically, I think it's very important, as we hear the governor, as we hear our state elected officials, our city elected officials talk about their plans, having those kinds of environmental investments is going to be particularly important in order for us, at least New Yorkers, to protect ourselves from what may be compromised on the federal cuts to the EPA. Thank you.
Our next question is from Eladio from Astoria. If you can please stand up.
Hi. This is my first town hall meeting, so I'm a little nervous, but I'm really concerned about about Trump's defiance of court orders bringing back Kilmar Garcia, essentially eliminating due process for all U.S. persons in the country, regardless of citizenship status. My question is, what can Congress do about this? What does it say about a post-Trump presidency that this sets a precedent for any future president to do this in the future, defying the court orders, especially SCOTUS, the highest court in the land?
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And this is one of those incredibly important questions, because what is happening to Kilmar Abrego Garcia could happen to any one of us, because that is what eliminating due process means. It means that, you could point to anyone and accuse them of being undocumented, including U.S. citizens, and just immediately ship off U.S. citizens to some prison camp in El Salvador that is not subject to U.S. jurisdiction. And this sets the ground not just for undocumented people, but for political dissidents as well, U.S. political dissidents. And so this is a tremendously important issue. Senator Van Hollen has been an incredible leader. For folks who may not know, Kilmar is a constituent in Maryland, and so his congressman is Representative Glenn Ivey, and Senator Van Hollen, who's also the chair on foreign affairs, or one of the leaders on foreign affairs in the Senate, has been able to draw a great degree of attention to this issue. I think we need to continue to have a drumbeat of legislators that are going to El Salvador, and not just making sure that we're keeping eyes on him, but that we are continuing to draw attention to this issue. And I do believe that that is what will be happening. I think that there are arrangements being made to ensure that, and I know that there's a steady stream. So it also, Senator Van Hollen did that, but I do know that Representative Maxwell Frost, Representative Robert Garcia on the Oversight Committee also headed down over there. And we are in a place where there have to be political consequences for these things. Things will not change unless there are political consequences. And one of the good things that we're seeing is that there are starting to be political consequences. We don't just have to wait until next year for something to happen. There have been these special elections that have been going on. There were 2 special elections in Florida where Matt Gaetz's seat was, and where Michael Waltz's seat was, those vacancies. And those are supposed to be solid red districts. And even though a Republican won in those seats, they were supposed to win by 40 points. And they won by much less than that. And that is why Elise Stefanik got pulled from the UN ambassador nomination, which is good. It's a good development because we need to show that these actions have consequences. And it sure seemed like Representative Stefanik wanted that post, and she's not getting it because she is enabling the brutality of this administration. And that's what these people respond to, is consequences. And so It's very important that we continue to organize and that we continue to show electorally that there are consequences for this, because unfortunately, with people who are so self-motivated, we should say, that's what they respond to. It is the FAFO theory of politics here that Republicans answer to. And so, unfortunately, appeals to compassion, appeals to democracy, we clearly are not things that they care about. But showing them that there will be limitations to their power, because they've built their power on cruelty. They've won elections on kind of this mandate of cruelty and talking about immigration and this idea that every DACA recipient, every dreamer is like a source of chaos in America. And so it's very important that we do that. And we will continue to fight for Kilmar Abrego Garcia's release as well. So thank you.
Thank you so much. That was our last question, but it's not the end just yet. We'd like to invite all of you to take a selfie with the Congresswoman.
I've been a little under the weather, so I can't do the one-on-ones today, guys. Sorry. Okay, am I doing this now? First of all, can we all please give Michelle a big round of applause? And I'd like to thank all of our staff that are here today. If you could please raise your hands. If you have any questions, if you ever call our office, these are the people picking up the phone. So please thank them. They have to deal with so much all the time. And can we please thank our interpreter here today, our ASL interpreter? Thank you. Thank you. We love you. We love you. Okay, so I guess we're taking this, and I guess, Michelle, I guess you'll post this later so that everyone who wants a photo together will have one. All right, say cheese, everybody. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, so much for coming. We'll be having another one soon. Thank you, everybody. Have a good one. Love you.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We would like to thank the IS 145 team and custodial staff for all of their help with this event tonight. We also want to thank our wonderful interpreters in the back, as well as all of the organizations that came out to table to share resources with our constituents. Please contact any of our staff members in the crowd if you still have any remaining questions. As a reminder, you can always contact our office by calling 718-662-5970 for Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez. Thank you again for joining us this evening.